Welcome, dear listeners, to Stories Teller, where nightmares take form and shadows whisper secrets. Tonight, we take you deep into the unknown, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs. Sit back, turn down the lights, and prepare yourself for a tale that will haunt you long after it ends. The move to Willow Lane. Emma had always been drawn to old houses. There was something about their history, their secrets, that fascinated her. So, when she saw the listing for the Victorian home on Willow Lane, she knew she had to see it. The house was everything she'd ever dreamed of, tall, Gothic, with intricate woodwork and stained glass windows. But as she stepped inside, she felt an immediate unease. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, and the walls seemed to hum faintly, as if alive. The real estate agent, a woman named Mrs. Greer, was oddly eager to sell. "It's a special place," she said, her voice tinged with something Emma couldn't quite place. Full of history, Emma ignored the chill that ran down her spine. She signed the papers that same day. But as the weeks passed, the house began to reveal its true nature. It started with the whispers. At first, Emma thought it was her imagination, a faint murmur, like someone speaking just out earshot. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Then came the scratching. Every night, just as Emma was about to fall asleep, she'd hear it, a slow, deliberate scratching coming from inside the walls. "It's just mice," she told herself. But deep down, she knew better. One night, unable to sleep, Emma decided to investigate. She grabbed a flashlight and followed the sound to the attic. The door creaked open, revealing a room filled with dust and decay. And that's when she saw it. A name carved into the wall, Abigail. Below were dozens of other names, each one etched with jagged, frantic strokes. Emma's heart raced as she realized what she was looking at. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma visited the local library. She spent hours poring over old newspapers and records, searching for anything about the house on Willow Lane. What she found made her blood run cold. The house had been built in 1890 by a wealthy family, the Hargroves. They were reclusive, rarely seen in town. But rumors swirled about their strange practices. Some said they dabbled in the occult. Others claimed they kept their youngest daughter, Abigail, locked away in the attic. One night, the entire family vanished. No explanation, no trace. The house sat abandoned for decades until a new family moved in. And then they vanished too. Emma's hands trembled as she read the headlines. Family disappears without a trace. Mysterious deaths on Willow Lane. The house that eats its inhabitants. She knew she had to leave. But as she packed her bags at night, the whispers returned. Louder this time. And they weren't just whispers. They were words. "Stay. You belong to us now." Emma froze. The scratching in the walls grew frantic, like something was trying to claw its way out. And then she saw it. A shadow moved across the wall. A figure, tall and thin, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. It reached out, its fingers stretching like smoke, and whispered, "We've been waiting for you." Emma tried to run. She grabbed her keys and bolted for the door. But the house had other plans. The door wouldn't open. The windows were sealed shut. The walls seemed to close in around her, the whispers growing into a deafening roar. And then the walls began to bleed. Thick, black liquid oozed from the cracks, pooling on the floor. The air smelled of rot and decay. Emma screamed, but no sound came out. The shadow figures emerged from the walls, their hollow eyes fixed on her. They surrounded her, their whispers merging into a single, chilling voice. "You can never leave." Emma's vision blurred. Her body grew heavy, as if the house itself was pulling her into its embrace. She felt herself sinking, the walls closing in, until there was nothing left but darkness. When Emma woke, she was no longer in the house. At least, not the house she knew. The walls were alive, pulsating with a sickly greenish glow. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the whispers were deafening. In the center of the room stood a figure, a woman, her face twisted in agony. She reached out to Emma, her voice trembling. "Help us," she begged. "We've been trapped here for so long." Emma realized with horror that the woman was Abigail Hargrove, and she wasn't alone. All around her were the others, the families who had lived in the house, their faces twisted in eternal torment. "The house feeds on us," Abigail explained. "It keeps us here, trapped in its walls. But you can free us. You can end this." Emma's heart raced. "How?" Abigail's eyes darkened. "You must perform the ritual. But be warned, it comes at a cost." Emma followed Abigail's instructions, gathering the items needed for the ritual: a black candle, a vial of blood, and a lock of hair from each of the trapped souls. As she prepared the ritual, the house fought back. The walls screamed, the floor buckled, and the shadow figures lunged at her, their claws slashing through the air. But Emma pressed on. She lit the candle, poured the blood, and placed the locks of hair in a circle around her. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. The walls began to crack, the house itself trembling with rage. And then, with a final, desperate cry, Emma completed the ritual. The house exploded in a burst of light, the walls collapsing in on themselves. The shadow figures screamed, their forms dissolving into nothingness. When the dust settled, Emma was alone. The house was gone, reduced to rubble. But as she turned to leave, she heard it, a faint whisper carried on the wind. "Thank you." Emma smiled, tears streaming down her face. She had freed them, but as she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that the house wasn't truly gone. Because sometimes the walls aren't just walls, and they're always watching. Part 2, the history of the Hargroves. Last time, we left Emma as she discovered the name Abigail carved into the attic wall, surrounded by dozens of other names. Names that seemed to scream out from the past, warning her of the horrors lurking within the house on Willow Lane. Tonight, we delve deeper into the history of the Hargrove family, the original inhabitants of the house, a family shrouded in mystery, darkness, and unspeakable secrets. This is part 2, the history of the Hargroves. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma visited the local library. The librarian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Thompson, seemed to recognize the address immediately. "Willow Lane," she said, her voice trembling. "That's the Hargrove house. No one's lived there for decades. Not since the last family disappeared." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Disappeared?" Mrs. Thompson nodded, her eyes distant. "It's a cursed place. Everyone who's lived there has met a terrible fate. The Hargroves were the first." Emma spent hours poring over old newspapers and records. The more she read, the more her unease grew. The Hargroves had been a wealthy family, prominent in the late 1800s, but they were also reclusive, rarely seen in town. Rumors swirled about their strange practices. Some said they dabbled in the occult. Others claimed they kept their youngest daughter, Abigail, locked away in the attic. One night, the entire family vanished. No explanation, no trace. The house sat abandoned for decades until a new family moved in. And then they vanished too. Sound effects, pages turning, faint whispers, and the distant sound of a child giggling. Narrator. Emma's hands trembled as she read the headlines. Family disappears without a trace. Mysterious deaths on Willow Lane. The house that eats its inhabitants. She knew she had to leave, but as she packed her bags that night, the whispers returned, louder this time. And they weren't just whispers, they were words. "Stay. You belong to us now." Emma froze. The scratching in the walls grew frantic, like something was trying to claw its way out. And then she saw it. A shadow moved across the wall, a figure tall and thin, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. It reached out, its fingers stretching like smoke, and whispered, "We've been waiting for you." Emma's research led her to an old photograph of the Hargrove family. They stood stiffly in front of the house, their faces expressionless. But one figure stood out, a young girl, her eyes wide with fear. Abigail. According to the records, Abigail had been the youngest daughter, just 10 years old when the family vanished. But the more Emma read, the more she realized that Abigail's story was far darker than she could have imagined. Abigail had been sickly from birth, her condition worsening with each passing year. Desperate to save her, the Hargroves turned to dark rituals that required sacrifices. At first, it was animals, then it was people. The Hargroves lured travelers to the house, promising them shelter for the night. But they never left. The rituals worked for a time. Abigail's health improved, but at a terrible cost. The house became a prison, its walls absorbing the souls of the sacrificed. And then one night, the Hargroves themselves became the sacrifices. The house, now alive and hungry, turned on its creators. The family vanished, their souls trapped within its walls. But Abigail remained. Her soul, bound to the house, became its guardian, a twisted, tormented figure, forever trapped between life and death. Emma's heart ached for Abigail. She was just a child, caught in a nightmare not of her making. But as she read on, she realized something even more horrifying. The house wasn't just feeding on the souls of the sacrificed. It was growing stronger, and it wasn't done yet. That night, the whispers returned. But this time, they weren't just whispers, they were screams. Emma covered her ears, but the sound was inside her head, echoing through her very soul. The walls began to bleed, thick, black liquid oozing from the cracks. The air smelled of rotten decay, and the shadow figures emerged once more, their hollow eyes fixed on her. But this time they weren't alone. Abigail stood among them, her face twisted in agony. She reached out to Emma, her voice trembling. "Help us," she begged. "We've been trapped here for so long." Emma's heart raced. How? Part 3. The Ritual. Last time, we left Emma as she discovered the horrifying truth about the Hargrove family and the dark rituals that bound their souls to the house on Willow Lane. Abigail, the youngest daughter, reached out to her, begging for help, but freedom comes at a cost. Tonight, Emma prepares to perform the ritual that could break the curse, or doom her forever. This is Part 3, The Ritual. Abigail's instructions were clear. To break the curse, Emma needed 3 things. A black candle, symbolizing the light that would guide the trapped souls to freedom. A vial of blood, representing the life force that bound the house to its victims. A lock of hair from each of the trapped souls to sever their connection to the house. The black candle was easy enough to find. Emma bought it from a small occult shop on the edge of town. The shopkeeper, an old man with piercing blue eyes, warned her to be careful. "Dark forces don't take kindly to being challenged," he said. "Once you start this, there's no turning back." Emma nodded, but her resolve was firm. She had to free Abigail and the others. The vial of blood, however, was another matter. Abigail's voice echoed in her mind. The blood must come from someone who has lived in the house, someone whose soul is still connected to it. Emma's heart sank. The only person who fit that description was her. With trembling hands, she pricked her finger and filled the vial. The blood glistened in the dim light, a stark reminder of the danger she was in. But the locks of hair would be the hardest to obtain. Each lock had to be taken from the trapped souls themselves, souls that were now part of the house, bound to its walls. Emma would have to face them, and they would not go quietly. That night, Emma stood in the attic, the black candle burning in her hand. The air was thick with tension, the walls pulsating with a sickly green light. Abigail appeared before her, her form flickering like a dying flame. "It's time," she said, "but be careful. The house will try to stop you." Emma nodded, her heart pounding. She approached the wall where the names were carved and placed her hand on the cold stone. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to come alive. One by one, the trapped souls emerged. First was a man in a tattered suit, his face twisted in rage. "You have no right," he screamed, lunging at Emma. She dodged, her hands trembling as she reached for scissors. With a swift motion, she cut a lock of his hair. The man screamed, his form dissolving into smoke. Next was a woman in a blood-stained dress, her eyes hollow and lifeless. "You'll never escape," she hissed. Emma's hands shook as she cut a lock of the woman's hair. The woman let out a blood-curdling scream before vanishing. One by one, Emma faced the souls, each more terrifying than the last. But the hardest was Abigail. The young girl stood before her, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared," she whispered. Emma's heart broke. "It's going to be okay," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm going to set you free." With a gentle hand, she cut a lock of Abigail's hair. The girl smiled, her form flickering. "Thank you," she said, before disappearing into the light. Emma's heart ached, but she knew there was no turning back. The ritual was almost complete. As Emma placed the final lock of hair in the circle, the house erupted in fury. The walls screamed, the floor buckled, and the air grew thick with the stench of decay. Shadow figures emerged from the walls, their hollow eyes fixed on Emma. They lunged at her, their claws slashing through the air. Emma held the black candle high, its flame flickering in the darkness. "I banish you," she cried, her voice trembling but firm. "I banish you from this place." The shadow figures screamed, their forms dissolving into smoke. But the house wasn't done yet. The walls began to close in, the ceiling collapsing as the house tried to crush her. Emma's time was running out. With a final, desperate cry, she lit the locks of hair, the flames spreading quickly. The house let out a deafening roar, its walls cracking and crumbling. And then, with a blinding flash of light, it was over. The house was silent. Emma stood amidst the rubble, her heart pounding. She had done it. But as she turned to leave, she heard it, a faint whisper carried on the wind. "Thank you." Emma smiled, tears streaming down her face. She had freed them. But as she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that the house wasn't truly gone. Because sometimes the walls aren't just walls, and they're always watching. Emma's journey into the darkness has reached its climax, but as the dust settles, one question remains. Is the house truly gone? Or is it waiting, biding its time until the next unsuspecting soul crosses its threshold? Join us next time for Part 4, The Aftermath, as Emma confronts the lingering shadows of Willow Lane. Until then, remember, sometimes the walls aren't just walls, and they're always watching. Part 4, The Aftermath. Last time, we left Emma as she performed the ritual to break the curse of the house on Willow Lane. The house collapsed in a blinding flash of light, and the trapped souls were finally set free. But freedom comes at a cost. Tonight, we follow Emma as she tries to rebuild her life and confronts the lingering shadows of the house that still haunt her. This is Part 4, The Aftermath. Emma moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. It was nothing like the grand Victorian home on Willow Lane, but it was safe, or so she thought. At first, life seemed normal. She found a job at a local bookstore, made new friends, and tried to put the past behind her. But the nightmares wouldn't stop. Every night, she dreamed of the house, its walls closing in, the whispers growing louder, the shadow figures reaching out to her. And then there were the waking moments. Sometimes, she'd catch a glimpse of shadow out of the corner of her eye. Other times, she'd hear a faint whisper just out of earshot. "It's just my imagination," she told herself. "The house is gone. It can't hurt me anymore." But deep down, she wasn't so sure. One night, Emma woke to the sound of scratching. Her heart raced as she sat up in bed, her eyes scanning the dark room. The sound was coming from the wall. She approached it slowly, her hands trembling. The scratching grew louder, more frantic. And then she saw it, a name carved into the wall, Abigail. Emma stumbled back, her breath coming in short gasps. "No," she whispered. "This isn't possible. The house is gone." But the scratching continued, the name growing clearer with each passing second. Emma grabbed her phone and called the only person she could think of, Mrs. Thompson, the librarian who had helped her research the Hargroves. "I need your help," Emma said, her voice shaking. "It's happening again." Mrs. Thompson arrived within the hour. She examined the wall, her face pale. "The house may be gone," she said, "but its influence remains. The curse isn't broken. It's just changed." Emma's heart sank. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Thompson hesitated. "The house wasn't just a place. It was an entity, and now it's attached itself to you." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. "What do I do?" Mrs. Thompson's eyes were grave. "You have to finish what you started. But this time, there's no guarantee you'll survive." Emma knew what she had to do. She returned to Willow Lane, the rubble of the house still lying in a heap. The air was thick with tension, the whispers growing louder as she approached. Abigail appeared before her, her form flickering like a dying flame. "You shouldn't have come back," she said, her voice trembling. "I had to," Emma replied. "I can't let this continue." Abigail's eyes filled with tears. "The house is stronger now. It's using you to rebuild itself." Emma's heart raced. "How do I stop it?" Abigail hesitated. "You have to sever the connection, but it will cost you everything." Emma nodded, her resolve firm. "Tell me what to do." Abigail's voice was barely a whisper. "You have to let go." Emma closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. She took a deep breath and stepped into the rubble. The house roared to life. Its walls were forming around her. The shadow figures emerged, their hollow eyes fixed on her. But Emma stood her ground. "I banish you," she cried, her voice trembling but firm. "I banish you from this world." The house screamed, its walls collapsing once more. The shadow figures dissolved into smoke, their forms vanishing into the light. And then, with a blinding flash, it was over. Emma stood amidst the rubble, her heart pounding. She had done it, but as she turned to leave, she felt a strange pull, a connection that refused to be severed. The house was gone, but its shadow remained. Emma's journey into the darkness has reached its end, but as she walks away from the rubble of the house on Willow Lane, one question remains. Is the curse truly broken, or is it waiting, biding its time until the next unsuspecting soul crosses its path? Join us next time for Part 5, The Shadow's Embrace, as Emma confronts the final remnants of the house's curse and the darkness within herself. Until then, remember, Sometimes the walls aren't just walls, and they're always watching.